We have the critical math. Well, hello and welcome to URISA's Excellence in GIS webinar series. The URISA Exemplary Systems in Government, or ESIG awards, were first presented in 1981 to recognize outstanding achievement by government agencies in the use of geospatial information technology. This exemplary achievement is defined as the effective application of geospatial technologies and data that result in improved government service delivery and increased benefits to citizens. The award competition is international in nature and open to all public agencies at the local, regional, state, provincial, and federal levels. My name is Zan Fredericks, and I serve on the URISA Board of Directors, so it's my pleasure to moderate today's webinar featuring the 2022 ESIG Single Process winner, the Franklin County Auditor's Office Tax Incentive Hub from Franklin County, Ohio. Now, as we learn about the Tax Incentive Hub, I want to encourage you to enter your questions into the Q&A function. If you hover over your Zoom window toward the bottom, you should be able to find it there. And then we'll let the team address those at the end today. So joining us from the winning team, we have Matt Shade, who is the GIS Director for the Franklin County Auditor's Office. He earned a bachelor's degree in Geography GIS from The Ohio State University in 2004 and has been a GISP since 2012. Matt has worked for the Franklin County Auditor's Office since 2019. Michael DeLiberato, who is a GIS developer for the Franklin County Auditor's Office. He earned a bachelor's degree in geography with a minor in geology from Ohio University in 2011. Michael has 12 years hands-on GIS experience and has worked for the Franklin County Auditor's Office since 2018. Will Scarborough, who is the Tax Incentives Supervisor and TIRC Representative for the Franklin County Auditor's Office. He earned his bachelor's degree in political science from the Ohio State University in 2018. Will is a registered real estate appraiser assistant with the state of Ohio and working toward becoming a certified real property appraiser. He's been with the Franklin County Auditor's Office since 2019. And Sarah Elder, who is the team lead in the Tax Incentives Department at the Franklin County Auditor's Office. She graduated from the College of Charleston in 2004 and has been with the Franklin County Auditor's Office for nearly 2 years. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Zan. Let's jump into it. We're going to start with the agenda for today. We're going to talk about basics of tax incentives, and then get into how we built the hub. Build it and they will come as a section about outreach and communications and what we did to bring people on board with it, and make people aware. A couple of things on our to-do list for what's next, and then takeaways and wrap up. So here we go. I'm going to start with the county auditor's role in tax incentives. And just to give you a little bit of background about Franklin County, we're now the most populous county in Ohio at 1.3 million, continue to grow. We currently have about 10% of our 435,000 parcels with some kind of tax incentives applied to them. And from here, I'll pass it along to Will.
Thanks, Matt. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As was mentioned, I am the Tax Incentives Supervisor here at Franklin County Auditor's Office. Tax incentives ultimately do one of two things. They lower the property taxes owed or redistribute where those taxes are going at the parcel level. Our office has an entire department dedicated to the administrative portion of tax incentives. There are 7 of us in the team, including myself and Sarah. And to be clear, we do not here at the Auditor's Office create any kind of tax incentive, but are tasked by law with administering these municipal government created projects. By statute, the auditor is also the chair of the Tax Incentive Review Council in the county. These councils review their incentives at the municipality level each year. I'll share a little bit more on that later, though. So tax incentives have often been a hotly debated issue. Their creation of things like jobs and community viability doesn't come without a cost. The money that residents and businesses are saving ultimately come at the expense of a variety of tax-funded programs. So here's just 3 recent examples of tax incentives making our local news. First is that downtown residential abatements are now that initially drew people back into the area are starting to end. And as a result, residents are facing much higher property taxes and tough decisions. Second is that last year, Columbus strike delayed the first day of school. Much of their consternation was over the losses in revenue for public schools as a result of these tax abatements. And number three is that Intel manufacturing facility is coming just across our county line. It's currently under construction and will be receiving 30-year, 100% tax abatement. It promises to bring jobs and boost the local economy. As you can see, tax incentives are often a double-edged sword. There are actually four primary types of tax incentives. First are abatements. They are partial or full property tax breaks with the goal of creating jobs and community reinvestment. Next are TIFs, or tax increment finance. These set aside funds for community reinvestment. Three is exemptions, particular parcels that are excused from property taxes. And lastly, CAUV, or current agricultural use valuation, applies to parcels that are exclusively dedicated to agricultural use. Essentially, it reduces their land valuation for tax purposes. I'll now talk about these four in a little bit further detail. So a little more on abatements. They come in three types. Each, again, reduces the percentage of property taxes paid. Enterprise zones are a state incentive for commercial and industrial properties, and designated zones that are there for new investment and job creation. EPAs, or environmental protection abatements. These encourage brownfield cleanup, aka polluted areas and other environmental hazards in our communities to help kind of remedy those. And lastly, community reinvestment areas, or CRAs. These seek to boost residential, commercial, and industrial remodeling or new construction. A little bit more about TIFs, or tax increment financing. These don't actually change the amounts paid in individual property taxes. They just redirect portions of the taxes paid to specific projects. They are created by local government ordinances, and most are for things like infrastructure improvement, things like street lighting, roads, revitalizing public buildings, things like that. Up next, a little bit more about exemptions. They nullify property taxes for entities such as places of worship, government buildings, public schools, and nonprofits. Franklin County has quite a few exemptions thanks to both our state government and Ohio State University being based here. CAUV, agricultural use value of land, again, lowers the value of agricultural land for tax purposes. As Franklin County development continues to expand, as Matt mentioned, we are a growing county in terms of our population. We have less and less CAUV acreage per year. However, the number of parcels on CAUV has actually increased the last 2 years. This is thanks to smaller mom and pop agricultural operations such as beekeeping, things of that nature. Soil type also plays a factor in the overall valuation of CAUV land, as certain types are more valuable than others. I mentioned earlier TIRCs a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about them now. TIRC stands for Tax Incentive Review Council. Each municipality has its own TIRC, with the county auditor chairing each of them. These TIRCs oversee the respective TIFs and abatements on an annual basis per Ohio law, the ones that exist in these communities. TIRCs must meet prior to August 31st each year, with meetings starting in mid-May. During these meetings, the TIRCs review the status and level of compliance for each of their relevant parcels. However, to do so, they must collect lots of necessary data beforehand. The TIRC's collection of this various data created one big question for us. How do we take the necessary TIRC information and simplify the reporting process for the municipalities while simultaneously turning it into something that the public can understand and digest? This is where GIS came in.
So now we're going to talk about the design process and what led us to the hub. So the GIS team here, we're 10 people strong. And really, I think we all got involved in this in some shape or fashion. And we support anything from base mapping, ArcGIS Enterprise, ArcGIS Online, and not only the auditor's office, but really the whole county, all of our agencies. So let's talk about the team a little bit. We have the GIS team and the tax incentive team, of course. We also brought in ESIG Professional Services to help with the hub, because it was really our first time configuring the hub, and we needed a little bit of help with that. We also brought in somebody from the UI UX team at ESRI to help answer questions, kind of look at it from a user's perspective, ease of use, is it losing anybody, really who is your audience, kind of that type of thing. And of course, we pulled in some other departments here at the auditor's office to the IT and communications team and outreach. So really a lot of different people involved, different steps of the process. So we looked at the existing process and really just all kinds of software available to us. And you know, the first thing, one of the earlier decisions was, you know, is this appropriate for GIS? And you know, what are we going to do? And then we started looking at it more and more, and really our GIS hub and Survey 123 seemed like the right fit for us. So now I'm going to share a couple of things. So this was back in 2018, and this is what we had, some samples of what we had before the GIS team started. So this is a spreadsheet that we would release every year, you know, just Microsoft Excel, and we would upload that to our website. The next one is an earlier TIRC report, and again, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, you know, just and really pretty labor intensive for the staff to get these submitted every year. The next one is a later version of the report form. So as part of the TIRC reports, communities report, there are certain benchmarks, and then communities submit certain information. So again, pretty labor intensive, but this one was a fillable PDF. So now I'm going to turn over to Mike.
Thanks, Matt. As Matt said, my name is Mike Deliberato. I'm a GIS developer here at the Franklin County Auditor's Office, and wanted to discuss the creation and the data maintenance for the Tax Incentives Hub with you guys. We looked at a bunch of different options as far as how to collect data, how to show the information, and then we ended up, like Matt said, using Hub through Esri's ArcGIS platform. We chose Hub because we felt like it was a one-stop shop for the data, for the tax incentive surveys, and for the website displaying all of the information. We found that the Hub was relatively easy to use, with most pieces being drag and drop and configure out of the box, although we did use a little custom HTML and CSS to help us do what we needed to do. The GIS department and the auditor's office were the ones that were doing the heavy lifting for the Hub, but cross-training with Will, Sarah, and the tax incentives team allowed for great cross-departmental collaboration for displaying information for the Hub. An important part of the Hub were the photos that we had in the Hub. Quality photos of various areas of tax incentives were taken for the Hub, and were both vital in the creation of the Hub as well as the reports later on. To capture the photos, we used three specific methodologies rather. Cyclomedia. We actually used prior photos from other reports. And then we, of course, had people in the auditor's office go out and take photos for this. We tried to capture unique and intriguing photos to help gain attention for the Hub, and made sure that photos were both recognizable and meaningful to the users. So now I kind of want to talk about how the data was collected and how we got this whole thing together. The tax incentives team and the GIS team got together and reviewed the ordinances. And we felt like this exercise really helped the creation of the Hub, because both sides started understanding what the other side was doing. Obviously, GIS in reviewing these ordinances kind of started to pick up on, you know, knowledge of tax incentives, the ordinances behind it, the laws behind it. And then we really felt like the tax incentives team kind of started to understand GIS a little bit better too. So going into the services and the database integration, there are two main feature classes that we used for the Hub. One is the abatements and the other is TIFs. We'll start with the TIFs. So the TIFs are polygons that were created by the GIS department. So the GIS department will get in there, digitize the boundary of all of these, and then assign the appropriate TIF number. So while this is going on, the IT department grabs all pertinent information from our assessment information. So they grab all the data and they create us a table to join to. Our nightly process then takes that data. The key field on both of them would be the TIF name or the TIF number, the project number. And then our nightly process goes in there, realizes what's a TIF, what's not, and then assigns the data accordingly. Similar to the TIFs is the abatements. The workflow is pretty much the same, except the abatements are on a parcel level. So the IT team goes ahead and they creates their table. And then, those will have all of the parcel IDs that are, verified for abatements. And then our nightly process will grab that table, do a query based on which parcel IDs are part of the program. And then using either a truncate or append or an update cursor, what we do is we write all the values from the table that IT gives us. And nightly, we take those values and rewrite them into live data. So the Excel links. This is a way that we chose to do the reporting for, the end of tax season, if you will, or the end of incentive season, if you will. So what happens is, IT in collaboration with Sarah, Will, and the tax incentives team, IT creates an Excel file that has all of the information for the tax incentives for the year. So they create those and then they turn them back over to us. So we then add these Excel files to our server so we can create a repository for yearly tax incentives. So, with these Excel documents, you can go back all the way to 2014. And the reason that we did this is we felt like it was a form of governmental transparency, if you will. As tax incentives are subjective, we wanted to be transparent on where the dollars and the resources were going. Because as a taxpayer, pretty much your right to know. These tax incentives have many different effects on municipalities as well as other government agencies inside of our community. The indicators which we created, which are at the bottom of this slide, directly read the data from inside of the feature class when they're refreshed. This shows in near real time the advantages and challenges associated with tax incentives in the community. The hub was originally designed as a single page, but in design, we were experiencing a little bit longer loading times. So we kind of had to brainstorm a way to, chop it up. So we felt like, we would get data refreshed and displaying to our users a little bit quicker than what it was. So to do this, the way we did it is we kind of broke down the municipalities. Our municipalities are broken down from muni, villages, and townships. And then we kind of pivoted and did a separate page for all of the other government agencies to see where their tax dollars were being abated away and where they were being diverted. We worked with individual municipalities for the development of this, worked with their development teams as well. And you can see down at the bottom on all of the indicators, we have a link to the websites. Those links, so for municipalities, those links are going to link you directly to the development for that community's website. We figured that we would do this so that users had a better understanding of a program and they would know who to contact if they had questions.
Well, this is a pretty good time for a demo right here. So I'm going to open up my web browser and go into, let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to pin. That's okay. I'll just keep going. So this is the home page of the Tax Incentives Hub. for abatements, TIFs, CAUV, and exemptions, and some basic information about them. Going into the next tab, we have TIFs. And so again, some information about TIFs. Photo. This TIF is unique. It was a grocery store built in the TIF area. And then here's the dashboard. So you can zoom in, and these totals change as you're zooming in to your extent. You can also filter this. Go down to municipality or a township. Go ahead and turn that off. So now you can see all.
And then as far as design, pardon me, as far as design goes on the on this TIF dashboard in particular, you know, Matt pointed out some cool some features that we thought were pretty cool. You know, obviously it was important to be able to go ahead and filter and zoom to where you were trying to be. The indicators on the left were all configured as out of the box indicators. So in this dashboard, you know, there's 15 or 20 of them, and those are all set to zoom into the map or to adjust according to the map's extent, like Matt was talking about. So as you zoom in, the numbers change, giving you a better idea of, you know, the TIF areas inside of what I'll call areas of interest or points that the user would be interested in.
Okay, I'll go to the next. Here we have the abatements page, and really same concept. Some introductory language about abatements, enterprise zones, EPAs, CRAs, and these are all pretty recognizable areas here in the community. Again, same concept. You zoom in, and the titles change as you zoom. Then you can click on any of these abatements. The CRA, this is the CRA area. It's one of the prerequisites for getting an abatement, and then get some information on the abatement here. You should also just be able to zoom in, and it matches. We also have a link here. So these are parcel based, as Mike mentioned earlier. So you can pop open our property search and get a lot of information this way.
So for the design of this one, we ended up utilizing Experience Builder, and Experience Builder is, some of you guys may know, is relatively new to the ArcGIS suite, but we felt like, you know, it was a great time to take a dive and kind of learn some new information. And B, you know, there was some functionality inside of the dashboards that truthfully weren't cutting it for the abatements in particular. So, you know, we kind of gathered the wagons and had a come to moment, and we kind of decided that, you know, we would go with we would go with Experience Builder rather than dashboards for this one in particular.
Before we move on, I'll share one more thing here. Well, actually two more things. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of order, but we'll go back to the impacts of for the cities and the community agencies. So these are the city impacts, and like Mike said earlier, that we ended up splitting this page out into 3 different city, township, and village. You can scroll down here, and then each one of these, we work with each municipality to their desired web link on here, and they typically go to the economic development departments of the cities, and you can they can share out, you know, the good work that they're doing with these. So we go back here. Sorry, I'm having trouble with the screen. This is from the agency perspective. So you could go through here instead of the municipal perspective, and you can see each agency and how the abatements and the TIFs. So how many dollars are abated away and diverted away or foregone in the case of TIFs. So one more thing to show on the hub, and then we can maybe pause and take a few questions. I see a couple out there. So this is the TIRC page, and we update this annually. It has an interactive map on here, so you can click on each one. The polygons are TIFs, and then the points are abatements, and you can pop open the individual report on this. And then we also update these cards every year with the report, so you can get some metrics year over year, and then you can also take a look at the report as well. And this downloads, and then you can get the full report on tax incentives in Franklin County. So yeah, so let's pause at this point. Does anybody have any questions?
Checking the Q&A, I see Tim asked, did this work spark other ideas that GIS could help with?
Absolutely, yes. And that's actually in our slides later. But we really see this as a good template, you know, to take to other departments in our agency.
Fantastic. And has the tax incentive hub led to greater interest in the community? Are more people aware of tax incentives with this type of visualization?
I think they have. Really, I'll go into this a little bit later too, about our community outreach efforts. And yeah, we really have had some great work with that.
Fantastic. We don't want to scoop you more. Would you like to continue or take some more questions?
Well, let's keep going, and then we'll have some questions then too.
Sounds perfect.
Okay, let me switch back into PowerPoint. And so these are some slides we just have talking about the TIF dashboard and things like that. So Mike, I'll hand it back to you for survey 1, 2, 3.
Cool, thanks, Matt. So Matt was just mentioning the TIRC reports and the individual reports that we put out for this information. The GIS team needed a way to create reporting tools for the tax incentives team. We explored a bunch of options, but ultimately landed on survey 1, 2, 3. Why? Because we felt like it was the easiest way to get data from one place to the other, and because feature classes were obviously already created inside of GIS. Another reason we used 1, 2, 3 was because we felt that it had a nice interface for the users. It was very user-friendly and very easy to use both on the design end as well as on the survey input end. Data creation using this methodology was already in database format, so we found it very easy to share back and forth. So I kind of wanted to go into the 2 different methodologies that we use to create these reports. The first one, which you see here, is using survey 1, 2, 3. The first option being survey 1, 2, 3, like I said, all of the data inside of this feature class had global IDs enabled, which allowed us to concatenate a couple of fields and then generate a URL, which we would then turn back to Sarah and Will, and then they would turn around and send that to the municipalities. This option keeps things flexible for us on the data end, because the data can be edited both inside of the survey it can be edited inside of a GIS, so like outside of the survey, but bring in the feature class. And we felt like it was, it was a lot of the information could also be pre-populated. So when we would get this information or add this information in to the feature class, we could send it, Will and Sarah would send it off to the municipality, and half of their data was already in there because we had, reports from last year. This TIF or this abatement is still, from 1999 to 2023. So a lot of the data was the same. It allowed us to create conditional questions as well, which was great for the municipality and us, to be honest with you too, because it assured that all parties were answering the questions that they needed to. And then of course, if they hadn't answered one of the required questions, it wouldn't let them submit the report. So it really kind of almost created a fail-safe on our side so that there were going to be no issues with people using option one. This option ended up being the better option for municipalities with a smaller amount of tax incentives, because like I said, the data was pre-populated already, or some of the data was pre-populated already. And, as a municipality with multiple tax incentives, you can imagine how frustrating it would be to go in there and fill 100 of these things out. So for option two was formatted Excel sheets. These sheets directly match the schema that's inside of the GIS feature class. And like I had mentioned on the slide previous, option two was used by a lot of municipalities that had multiple tax incentives. So the idea behind that was, okay, we'll send you guys a formatted Excel document. You can jump in here, fill out all of the information from the Excel document, and then they would send it back to the tax incentives team. Once the tax incentive team kind of, vetted all of the information that was in there, they would then turn it back over to the GIS team here. And then we would do a join, for TIFs, it was based on project number. And then abatements, it was based on parcel number, like Matt had mentioned. And then we would either run a join and append, or we would run an update cursor, a Python scripted update cursor, to get all of the information that was in the Excel documents that was turned over to us back into the feature class, and then ready to use inside of the hub. Which leads us to annual reports. So as these surveys are completed, the data is taken from the feature class and individual reports are made. I had mentioned it last slide, TIFs were from the project number, abatements were from the parcel ID. And we set up forms inside of survey 123 to create the template for the report. After that, we then leveraged Arcade. A lot of you are familiar with Arcade, to get the data from the record to the report. So you can see here in the two examples in the bottom that for the municipality name in particular, we're pulling the name of the TIRC. And then on the outside, when Will and Sarah would split that out, it automatically reads the attribution for that record and fills in Worthington City. And then, so, we would get these, we would double check, make sure that all the data is moving from one place to the other, that all of the information is coming across correctly. And then we would take these reports and hand them back over to the tax incentives team.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so the TIRC process, again, this is a little bit of a refresher. Recap, municipalities are required to annually track down the relevant information for the mandatory report fields that kind of Mike just went over. So they reach out to businesses for updates on job creation, annual payroll figures, they determine how much is left to be drawn for TIFs and so on. Once the municipalities have entered their pertinent information into the survey fields, a report is generated for each TIF and abatement. So what happens with these reports and how do they fit into the bigger picture? First, these reports are used by each municipality's annual TIRC meeting to show how their various incentives are performing. From there, they tell the municipalities if businesses are holding up their end of CRA agreements, and then they can from there determine if any abatement should be rescinded or shortened based on issues of compliance. These reports are lastly also very important because they are filed and saved after each year, so progress of the various incentives can be tracked over time. I'll now turn it back over to Matt to talk a little bit how the hub has been utilized and received since it went live.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, so we really did, and really to back up, before we released it, we had a focus group, and this focus group consisted of suburban city council members, critics of abatements and tax incentives in general, people from economic development institutes, really just running the whole gamut. And we got a lot of great feedback from that. We implemented some of that before we released this. And then after we released it, we again, a lot of great engagement. We got earned media. So not only this the smaller article here at the top, but there was also like a Sunday like special section, like in the local section of the newspaper, that really went into depth on tax incentives, and really like this I think was a starting point. Of course, we did press releases to make sure all the media knew about it. We did interviews with the auditor. We got an organic letter to the editor, also in the local newspaper here. And then also, you know, our outreach team, they go out to city councils, to area commissions, civic associations, things of that nature, and they present it. They presented the hub, and really we continue to promote it. In fact, we are right now. It's always prominent on our webpage, and it's featured in newsletters and office publications. So really like a great effort with our communications and outreach teams. And the ArcGIS hub supports Google Analytics as well. So we've been able to monitor and measure, you know, how much engagement we have. We have about 200 users a month on average. It varies a little bit based upon what's on the news and things like that. We're also able to glean, you know, what's more popular. The abatements are more popular than tips for some reason. And then so I want to talk about like what's next. Really, we've got some maps that we want to share, and really we haven't put these out on the hub yet, but we do a remotely sensed delineation every year for CAUV, which is the map here on the slide. And we really, like, for our purposes, we don't go into like corn and soybeans and all that. We just it's cropland, pasture land, and woodland that we classify those out, and then get the rates per acre on those. But we're able to tell if it's being farmed or if it's fallow. So we have some text there right now, but we want to get this year, we want to share that out when we get our new delineations. Exemptions, kind of the same thing. We have a lot of good information out there, but we don't have it mapped yet. Now we do have it in some other mapping products, like the property search, but you know, really bringing it into the hub. So there is a little improvement that we like to do. And then more largely, you know, instead of the PDF format, making it more accessible into story maps or something like that for the annual report that I showed you. And then really, as I said, using this as a case to share information for other departments too, and create more hubs. So we're wrapping up here, and then we'll get into Q&A. Hope everybody learned something from this or got some ideas. again, it's really important to get everyone from the into the table. I mean, we had executive leadership, our SMEs, GIS department staff, we had a consultant, we had the UI UX team, IT, communications, outreach, the focus group, and all the municipalities, and really the public that we've been getting the word out. So really, we feel like everybody's at the table, the municipalities as well. And really, you know, we're sharing, we were in touch with the municipalities when we were when we were developing this. Now, there were some that like some vacations that were canceled that I heard about from the municipalities when this came out. It was in the summertime, but really, you know, we were kind of worried too, like when it first came out, but it was very well received, that you know, that it really was the right thing to do, to just be transparent and provide all the information that we had on the subjects, and then allow others to also, like the municipalities, have a link, and then they had lots of time to you know, develop their websites as well. But yeah, I mean, yay for transparency, right? So so that about wraps it up. So here's our contact information and a direct link into the hub as well. So let's are there any more questions, Anne?
There sure are. For those of us who joined us after introductions, we've been listening to the 2022 URISA ESIG single process winner, the Franklin County Auditor's Office Tax Incentive Hub. So some more questions. Elizabeth asks, she says, your dashboards look excellent. I see that you show dollars foregone for TIFs. Do you also show how the diverted funds have been used for development? As an example, X dollars were used to fund roads, infrastructure, etc., or any other data that may indicate value added by the diversion or abatement of taxes.
So I don't believe the hub gets down to kind of the nitty gritty on some of that. Some of those things, specifically thinking about TIFs, are kind of, you know, municipality specific. You know, we see how much is going into the community and how much their TIF is supposed to be before it expires, but what they end up spending that money on was kind of something they approved in their resolution. So we may not know exactly how much is going to roads versus fixing up a community building or pool or things like that. We just know kind of what that total sum is and track that.
That makes sense.
Someone could reach out directly to the municipality to get that right.
Absolutely. I would think that'd be a public records request of some kind, could definitely be made with the appropriate municipality.
Interesting. William asks, are all the agencies listed in the abatements, TIFs, and TIRCs affiliated with the county?
Is this, I'm assuming this is for those who had diverted funds, or is this who is receiving them?
We could wait for clarification if you want to go to the next question.
Yeah, let's come back to that one.
Sounds good. Tim asks, have other departments in Franklin County asked, I want something cool like that for our department too?
Plenty of them. So, you know, obviously with the promotion, both internal and external, that we're getting from the hub, the more eyes on it, we get calls all the time from, you know, different places around the state, even places out of the state, that are like, hey, you know, we've seen the tax incentives hub, and it can be anything from a phone call, just kind of like chat about it. Let me see what you think. You know, how did you do this? How did you do that? And then it gets into the nitty gritty, where I've taken a couple of calls where, you know, we've kind of combed through some code or the HTML on the back end, and kind of explained how it was going from one place to the other, or where you needed to reference something, or different ways to make it work. But yeah, there's been a lot of chatter, if you will, about the hub in particular. And it's been great because, you know, other municipalities, counties, areas aren't afraid to reach out. So, you know, there's room for collaboration there as well, which is great.
Fantastic. And William did clarify, he said, so the tax dollars that are going toward those that are owned by Franklin County. So is it that the tax dollars that are owned?
Let's see.
So it's not necessarily, I believe that like for example, these are the individual school districts, which we put out links to as well. So here in Franklin County, the school districts are a separate entity. Also, like the Columbus Zoo has its own board,
Right.
although like some of the seats are appointed by the county. So that one's maybe a little complicated, but it's not just directly county
So,
agency.
yeah, some more directly than others. You know, if it's the Franklin County Office on Aging, that's obviously overseen by the county directly, but you know, it's obviously all under the kind of the umbrella of the larger umbrella of the county. But some are going to be much more dependent on and left up to those specific municipalities. Think Grandview Heights Public Library, things like that. They're going to have kind of say in what that all goes towards in that situation. But of course, it is a part of the larger Franklin County.
Sure. Well, I encourage others to enter your questions into the Q&A. I wonder, do you have a piece of advice for others who have been inspired by your tax incentive hub?
I think again, just like getting everyone to the table that you know, it's really just like use what you have too. It doesn't necessarily need to be the hub, but or like the ArcGIS hub, but you know, I think it's been a success story.
And on our end, Sarah, I'm sorry, not Sarah, not Sam. It's been great too, because, you know, when we came up with the idea of the hub from the developmental standpoint, they lengthened the leash for us in not so many words. So a lot of it was development by trial and error, which is great. As a developer is something that I love, because not only are you creating a product, because like the vision was always there, like we always knew what we wanted to do, but to be able to create the product and have a long enough leash where it's like, hey, let's try this avenue. If this doesn't work, you know, maybe we can backpedal a little bit and try a different avenue. You know, the dashboard versus the experience builder is a perfect example of that. When we were doing the TIF dashboard originally, it checked off all the boxes. So we kind of just ran with the dashboard idea. And then, you know, abatements got a little more particular. And then we tried dashboards with that, and it wasn't really displaying the way we wanted to. There were a couple of issues with, you know, the visibility on the map. You know, as the numbers on the left as like Matt would zoom in, zoom out, whatever. In the dashboards, it was a little bit slower originally because it's a little bit bigger of a data set. So you're thinking, you know, from TIFs, there's maybe 25, 30 of them. I don't know the number off the top of my head. But in something like this, you can see an area right here where, you know, there's plenty of dots in there because they're all by the parcel level. So by, you know, the auditor and Matt, as far as design goes, with the auditor and Matt giving us a little bit of, like I said, a longer leash, it was great for us because we kind of got to play around, see what works, what didn't, and then, you know, went through that and then ultimately gave the best product to the constituents of Franklin County here.
That always feels good. Another question, how many people / hours does this take to upkeep?
On an annual basis. So really, like there's a few different components on it. The abatement points are scripted nightly. On these abatement polygons and the TIF polygons, those are staff entry time. So tax incentives emails us the ordinance, and then our staff digitizes them. They show up in the hub. The bigger annual lift is the TIRC, and Will coordinates that. Some of it's done by the tax incentives team directly, that you know, they have logins to Survey 123, and if any text needs to be updated in the hub, GIS is here to help with you know, more difficult HTML and like larger updates, and and then uploading all the report, the sections of the report and the main report. So that should give you an idea about the annual maintenance of it.
And kind of piggybacking on what Matt was saying and what I was saying earlier too, with that longer leash that was given to us, there was a lot of front end planning on this. So, when we were originally creating the feature classes, when we were originally creating, the surveys and stuff like that, there was foresight. We had the view at the end of the tunnel, or the light at the end of the tunnel, as far as where we wanted to get to. So a lot of the work was really put in on the front end. And now that it's kind of starting to become a polished, application, we have noticed, decline in staff, manual staff entry is what I'll call it. We've noticed a decline in that for the last 2 years.
Yeah, just making it repeatable.
Yep.
Right.
That's always a good thing to achieve. And just to clarify, when you say your team is made up of 10 people, is it the 10 people in the assessor's office, or is it your entire design team, including tax incentives, auditors, IT, and communications, and the tax teams?
That's actually only the GIS staff. So we had quite a bit of interaction with some people from other departments as well.
Great. And you mentioned about having a sense of getting everyone to the table, and it felt like it must have gotten lots of people involved.
Yes.
It sure did.
That's great. So I do wonder, you mentioned so many advantages of the tax incentive hub. Was there an unexpected benefit that was realized that you just didn't see on the horizon?
I think part of the way that the community responded to it, as Will was mentioning before, tax incentives are kind of a dicey subject, because you got tax dollars being diverted away from areas that might need help, but at the same time, they're diverting that to bring more people in. So it's a very subjective thing. So from my end, I learned a lot. Just, I was surprised on how many people. It's kind of one of those things where we were talking about it before we released it, and it was like, well, I wonder how this is going to go, and Matt was kind of mentioning, canceled vacations, if you will. So
and people protesting.
Yeah, so we were really, really worried about it, but as the information came up, as we said earlier, this is a tool for transparency. It was never to put, show somebody in bad light or show somebody in good light. It was just, here's the information. So I think one of the things that we were really excited about is the way that, the constituents of Franklin County bought into it, because, they, at that point, they had all the information at their fingertips, and it ended up being a great tool for them to learn with.
It certainly sounds like it. One of my favorite sayings is the best tool is the one that's used, and it sounds like they're using it. So that's very exciting. Well, thank you so much, Matt, Michael, Will, and Sarah. Again, they're from the Franklin County Auditor's Office, and congratulations again for being the 2022 URISA ESIG Single Process winner. Any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
No, the one thing I was going to piggyback off on was just that it's really been a great tool for the consumer and the folks of the communities, because now they can take this tool with them, and they're more well equipped, and they want to go in front of their local municipality or city council and say, this is how I feel about this. We should be doing more of these types of incentives, or we should be doing less. And so it's just been encouraging to see sort of the increase in civic mindedness and participation from folks in the community. So that's been exciting.
The increased participation in the community. I think that's a wonderful message to get out, that is one of the many benefits of GIS, and specifically your tax incentive hub.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. And let's go ahead and show you some upcoming URISA offerings. We hope you'll join us again soon for one of them. We've got 2 GIS Leadership Academies coming up, one in North Carolina and one in Colorado. Perhaps you could join us in Franklin County for the GIS Pro 2023 conference that will be in Columbus, Ohio. There are also numerous webinars and virtual education offerings, so be sure to check out the URISA portal for the full list. And and the registration options. So thank you all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks again, Matt and your team.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.